They always called me the quiet one. The one who didn't complain, didn't ask for much, didn't need attention. And for years I believed staying silent would earn me love. I worked harder, rose higher, achieved everything they said I couldn't. Still, I was invisible. Until the day I bought the house they thought they owned. Let me take you back to how it all began. My name is Elena Westbrook. I'm 38 years old, currently serving as Chief Growth Officer at a tech investment firm based in Boston. But to my family, I've always been the odd one out, the practical disappointment wrapped in degrees and titles they never bothered to understand. Every July, they hold a reunion at the old family lodge in Bar Harbor, Maine, the place I once called home. It used to smell like pine wood and some warm stone. Now it just smells like exclusion. This year? No different. The email came through at 9 a.m. sharp on Monday. Subject line in bold caps: "Don't forget the Westbrook family gathering. Summer in Bar Harbor." From my oldest sister, Danica. Her tone was breezy and warm, like we were all eager to hug and swap stories. But I knew the truth. I was just a name on the list. How do I know? Because for the last 8 years I haven't had a bed there. The rooms are full, Elena, Mom always says. You might want to look for a nice little Airbnb nearby. Classic Marla Westbrook move. So reliable you could set your watch by it. I was sitting in my office, 30th floor, corner view, when I opened that email. Just then, Naomi, my assistant, came in with 2 coffees. "Reunion again?" she asked, seeing my expression. I nodded. "Let me guess," she said. "No room again this year?" I gave a dry laugh. Probably making space for Danica's son to paint his murals in peace. I didn't need to wait for the call, I knew it would come. Mom would phone that evening, syrupy voice lined with subtle dismissal. "Elena, sweetheart, the attic's under repair. Kieran needs a quiet place to rehearse violin. You understand, don't you?" Every year, I used to say yes. I'd force a smile no one could see and hang up. But not this time. I glanced at the letter from our board of directors sitting on my desk. It confirmed my promotion, Executive Vice President for Eastern Markets. A role I had clawed my way toward for over a decade, outmaneuvering competitors who underestimated me every step of the way. They didn't know. They never asked. I remembered the summer I was 12 when things began to shift. "Elena, go clear the dishes," Mom had said. "Danica and I need to prep the guest room." Meanwhile, my brother Julian got to sit out front with Dad, learning how to mix cocktails and shake hands with politicians. I stood in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, soap on my arms, listening to their laughter drift in from the porch. That's when I knew my job was never to shine, it was to support. Danica the darling, Julian the visionary. Me? I was the neutral colored thread holding their tapestry together. My phone buzzed. A message from Samantha, my best friend from MIT. "Bar Harbor again? Want me to send backup wine?" I typed back, "Send a parachute. I need out of this family circus." Then my phone rang. "Mom." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering. But I didn't answer. I already knew the script. It wasn't an invitation, it was tradition disguised as inclusion. A hollow gesture I'd seen too many times before. I stood by the window, looking out over the Boston skyline as dusk washed the buildings in silver. Below, the city pulsed with ambition and purpose, everything I had built, brick by brick, while my family never asked how I was doing. Never asked anything at all. But this year, something shifted. It wasn't grief. It wasn't even anger. It was precision. A quiet, clean break forming somewhere deep inside me. The day the board finalized my promotion to Executive Vice President of Eastern Markets, Danica posted a photo of the family's annual pre-reunion picnic. Everyone was there, Julian tossing a football on the lawn, the cousins baking pies in the background, even the dog wearing a patriotic bandana. Everyone but me. Beneath it, Mom had commented, "Nothing more important than family. Always." I stared at that sentence for nearly 5 minutes. It was ironic, really. I had poured myself into every challenge they said I couldn't handle. Graduated valedictorian from Columbia, landed a full scholarship to Stanford's MBA program, launched my first successful fund before I turned 30. But in their world, none of that mattered. It wasn't that they disagreed, it was that they didn't see me at all. A few months earlier, I flew in for Mom's 70th birthday, held at a historic estate-turned-restaurant in Providence. I'd just come from a mergers conference in Toronto and hadn't slept in 24 hours. Still, I arrived on time, wearing a navy blue sheath dress and heels that were killing me. I brought a gift wrapped in Italian paper, a limited edition journal made of hand-bound leather from Florence. I'd had her initials pressed into the cover. She always said she wanted to write her memoir one day. She barely looked at it. "Oh, Elena, you made it. I assumed work would keep you away," she said with mild surprise before turning immediately to Danica. "Honey, this color on you is stunning. Did you get your hair done at Elaine's again?" I stood there, my fingers still clutching the ribbon I hadn't finished tying, surrounded by candles and cutlery polish to reflect the glow of people who still didn't see me. Later, Julian got up to speak. He toasted to Mom's love and belief in him, despite 3 failed startups in one brief detour into cryptocurrency coaching. Everyone applauded. Mom's eyes shone with tears. Dad patted him on the back like he'd just returned from war. No one asked what I'd been working on. No one noticed the international merger I had just closed, $200 million in cross-border equity strategy. That night, over dry sea bass and 2 sweet wine, Mom shared how Danica used to arrange tea parties for her dolls. Such grace, even as a child. I had just completed the redesign of our firm's NYC offices, an interior praised in Architectural Digest. But in her world, a tea set from 1989 carried more glory than a published design award. The following week, I offered to help fix the leaky roof at the Bar Harbor Lodge. The cedar shingles were crumbling and moss had overtaken the garden path. Mom's response was gentle and sharp. "Danica and Greg are already working on it. I didn't want to burden you, you're always flying somewhere." I went quiet. That house was where I learned to ride a bike. Where I made my first sketch on the sunroom floor. Where I once imagined I'd say my vows. And now? I was just a guest with no room key. They just can't handle that the one they wrote off became the most accomplished of us all. That's what Samantha said as we shared a late dinner over video call, her face glowing on my tablet screen from her Chicago condo. I didn't argue, just smiled faintly. Because she was right. That night, I stayed up until 3 a.m. in my Back Bay penthouse, the city below blanketed in amber light. A glass of wine sat untouched on the windowsill. I opened my laptop, not for work, but for something more personal. I typed in the name of a niche real estate site that specialized in coastal properties. And there it was. The Bar Harbor Lodge, my childhood sanctuary turned exclusion zone, listed quietly for sale 3 weeks ago. No one had told me. Of course they hadn't. They didn't think I'd care. Or worse, they assumed I couldn't buy it. I took a screenshot and sent it to Samantha with just 5 words. Time for my final move. Not out of bitterness. Out of resolve. To reclaim what should have never been taken. To make it impossible for them to pretend I was invisible. 2 weeks after Mom's birthday, I got the follow-up email for this year's family reunion. Subject: "Can't wait to see you all. Love, Danica." I opened it, already knowing what I wouldn't find. The itinerary was neat, color-coded, attached with enthusiasm. Danica and Greg had claimed the upstairs master suite. Julian and his new partner were assigned the east-facing guest room. Even the grandkids had a dedicated play area listed. Me? At the very bottom in small, almost apologetic text. "Elena, if you're attending, please secure an Airbnb nearby. We're at full capacity. Hope that's all right." I closed my laptop and leaned back. No sting. No surprise. Just clarity. That evening, with the city finally quiet outside my windows, I reopened the real estate listing. I filtered the results to show Bar Harbor vacation homes. The lodge appeared at the top, still beautiful in shape, but weather-worn. The roof was stained, the cedar siding faded. A note beneath the listing read, "Needs renovation. Price reduced 20%. I clicked into the transaction history. The house had been refinanced 2 years ago, but the loan hadn't been touched since. That's why they were selling. Not nostalgia, urgency. The family that had always preached legacy was now scrambling to cover up financial decay. I closed the page, breathing deeply. That house had once been where I buried secret treasures in the backyard, where I drew sketches on the kitchen table. Now it was proof, not of what I'd lost, but of what I could reclaim. The next morning I called Lauren, my attorney and financial advisor. "You're buying it?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "But not under my name. Use the shell company we formed last year. Elena Westbrook doesn't need to be on the deed." She laughed softly. "Message received." "Well played," Lauren chuckled. "I'll handle the filings today. And I assume this stays between us." "Of course," I said. "I've never told them anything. Not even when I was featured in Forbes." She laughed again. "No reason to start now." 3 weeks later, the transaction closed without a hitch. The bank, desperate to offload the property, never asked about the buyer behind my holding company, only that the payment arrived promptly. And it did. I signed the final contract from my Boston office, my espresso still warm, the sky outside streaked with early morning gold. When Lauren slid the last page across the table, she said simply, "You now own the Westbrook Lodge in Bar Harbor, Maine. Congratulations, Elena." I held the new key in my palm. Cold. Weighted. Beautiful. Not a trophy. A full circle moment. Not revenge. Restoration. I didn't tell anyone, not Samantha, not Naomi at work. Not even Marcus, my closest confidant at the firm. Instead, I quietly blocked off my calendar, labeling the weekend as a wellness retreat. That Thursday, I arrived in Bar Harbor 3 days ahead of the family. In the passenger seat beside me sat a leather briefcase and a sealed folder marked Vander and Bright Technologies. I had just finalized a strategic merger between Vander and our firm, a quiet but earth-shaking $420 million deal in the fintech world. I had led the negotiations personally. The ink was barely dry when the announcement came through. I had been nominated for International Vice President, a role that would relocate me to Tokyo by the end of the quarter. No one in my family knew. They never asked. Never called. Never cared. In their minds I was still Elena, the quiet one. The too serious one. The one who never made it back for reunions because she was probably swamped with spreadsheets. Once I believed that earning titles would make them see me. That breaking records, sealing deals, and speaking on global panels would finally make someone in my family say, "We're proud of you." But they never did. And now I didn't need them to. The day the email arrived confirming my promotion, the subject line read, "You've earned this." And for the first time in a decade I cried. Not because of the corner office. Not even the international perks. But because someone somewhere saw me. Really saw me. That afternoon, I sat on the wooden balcony of the lodge, my lodge now, watching seagulls swirl above the bay. The sea carried old memories in the salt air. Samantha called. "You really did it," she said breathlessly. "I just read the article. Elena, you're on the front page of the Wall Street Financial Review." "They chose me," I replied softly. "No," she corrected. "You chose yourself." I smiled, eyes on the waves. "They probably haven't even noticed. Danica's probably flipping through LinkedIn trying to make sure it's not a typo," she snorted. "Or swearing it's just another Elena Westbrook." "Too late," I said quietly. "I'm not invisible anymore. And Julian probably thinks it's a deepfake," Samantha added with a chuckle. "Are they arriving today?" I glanced at the clock. "Tomorrow morning," I said. "And I'll be here. First one to greet them. Just promise me you'll take a photo of their faces. You deserve to witness this." We ended the call and I sat there a moment longer, oddly serene. There had been a time, years really, when I clung to the hope that one of them would call. That one day a card would arrive reading, "We're proud of you." That being excellent would be enough to make them see me. But now with my name in headlines I no longer needed their praise. I had already proven myself to myself. The next morning, just after 8 a.m., the national business broadcast aired a segment on the Vander and Bright merger. 2 full minutes. There I was on screen, shaking hands with the CEO in a navy crepe suit, the caption beneath reading, "Elena Westbrook, the woman behind the $420 million deal that redefined the fintech market." And then came the barrage. First, "Mom. Sweetheart, was that really you? I just saw the news." I didn't reply. Next, "Danica. Media blows everything up, but if it's real, congrats, I guess." I locked the screen. Then "Julian, thinking of launching something new, could use your input. Maybe we could collaborate." I laughed softly, not with malice but a kind of weary amusement. For years my silence was interpreted as failure. Now one broadcast had them scrambling to rewrite history. No apology. No recognition of what they'd done or hadn't done. Just the sudden interest of people who had overlooked me for decades. I walked through the house slowly. The rooms hadn't changed. The wallpaper still held the same faded blues. But next week, a design team would arrive. This wasn't just going to be a home, it would be a statement. A symbol of the woman they never expected I'd become. I opened the envelope from HR, travel documents, itinerary, housing placement for Tokyo. My new penthouse overlooked the bay. My new team already waiting. But before I boarded any flight, there was one final act. They thought this was still their house. Tomorrow, they'd learn the truth not through confrontation, but through clarity. And right on cue, I heard tires crunch over gravel. I poured my coffee slowly in the same kitchen where I used to sit cross-legged eating toast. Outside, Mom's SUV arrived. Then Danica's sleek sedan. Then Julian's rental. They stepped out, laughing like nothing had changed. As they reached for their keys, I set my mug down and walked to the door. The lock didn't budge. Mom's voice rose with confusion. Danica, honey, why isn't it opening? Julian, try yours, Mom said, her voice tinged with confusion. Of course, Danica replied, stepping forward and sliding her key into the lock. Click. Click. Nothing. Julian followed. Same result. Before the tension could rise further, I opened the door from the inside, fingers curled calmly around the brass knob. The door creaked open slowly, and the three of them turned in unison, staring at me like I'd stepped out of someone else's dream. Elena. Mom blinked, startled. What are you doing here? I tilted my head slightly, letting a soft, deliberate smile form. Welcome to the Westbrook Lodge, I said. Come in. They hesitated. I stepped aside with a quiet elegance that sliced through the summer air. Calm, but unmistakably in control. Danica looked past me warily. Wait, why didn't the keys work? Who let you in? I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I turned and walked into the living room. On the coffee table sat a sleek black folder stamped with the Granite Shore Hotel logo, an exclusive 5-star resort just 10 minutes down the coast. On top of the folder were neatly stacked envelopes, each embossed with names in gold ink. Inside, golden key cards. Personalized welcome letters. There's something you all should know, I said as I turned to face them fully. This house, I continued slowly, no longer belongs to the family. Silence fell like a dropped glass. I purchased the property over a month ago through my private investment company, I said clearly. From now on, reunions here require clearance from the legal owner. Julian's brows furrowed. Wait, you bought the lodge? With what? Bonus points? No, I replied smoothly, opening my iPad. With equity and executive control from the Vander and Bright merger. It closed at $420 million last quarter. I turned the screen toward them. There I was, shaking hands with the CEO, headlines flashing my name across financial news feeds. If you spent less time pitching your latest crypto app, I added without raising my voice, you might have caught it on the news. Danica stepped back slightly, face flushed. Elena, why wouldn't you say anything? Why do it like this? I raised my chin. Because no one's asked. Not once. Not even when I made partner. Not even when I offered to help with the roof. I looked directly at Mom. The last time you acknowledged me was 2 years ago. You asked me to move out of a photo so Danica could have the perfect frame. Mom lowered herself into a chair like the weight of it all finally landed. So what happens now? She whispered. No reunion? I slid the hotel folder toward them. I've reserved the entire top floor of the Granite Shore Hotel. Private suites. Terrace barbecue. Kid space. Even a photo gallery. Julian opened his envelope. A golden keycard shimmered inside. And you? Danica asked quietly. You're not coming? I'll be staying here, I said, sipping my coffee. I'm preparing for relocation. To where? Mom asked, barely audible. Tokyo. International Vice President. I start next quarter. Don't worry, I said, setting my coffee mug down. I'll still send photos, just like the reunion pictures you used to post without me in them. Silence settled in the room like mist. For several long seconds, no one moved. Then finally, Mom's fingers tightened around the gold key card. Her lips parted, barely able to form words. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't answer. I just gave her a quiet nod. Danica looked at me then, not with pride, not with envy, but something closer to awe. Elena, she said softly, whatever else, you did it. You really did it. You surpassed all of us. I gave a small shrug. I never needed to be better. I just wanted to be treated like I mattered. Like I belonged in this family. That's all I ever wanted. They didn't argue. There was nothing left to say. I walked them to the door, not coldly, not kindly, just without bitterness. They stepped out onto the gravel drive, eyes lingering on the porch they once claimed as their own. Then without a word, they got into their cars and drove away. When I closed the door behind them, the lock clicked into place with a sound so final it felt like punctuation. Not on vengeance, on closure. And yet, what I felt wasn't triumph. It was stillness. The kind of stillness that comes when you've finally stopped waiting for something that was never going to arrive. The next day, just after lunch, I heard footsteps on the stone path again. I opened the door to see Mom standing there, but this time she held no suitcase. No keys. Just a small wooden box clutched in both hands. Her eyes were dark from lack of sleep, and the proud posture she once carried had melted into something quieter. Heavier. I'm not here to ask for anything, she said hoarsely. I have something I think you should keep. She held the box out to me. I took it gently. The oak corners were worn, but someone had taken great care to polish them clean. I lifted the lid. Inside were faded newspaper clippings, each one with my name in bold. Westbrook closes record-breaking investment deal, top 40 under 40, women in finance, Elena Westbrook, the woman behind the numbers. Tucked beside them were my college transcripts, my MBA graduation program, even a printout of my first published research thesis. I looked up. I thought you didn't care. I thought so too, she said, eyes never leaving the box. But every time I saw your name somewhere, I clipped it. I kept it. I told myself you didn't need me. That you'd moved too far beyond my reach. And so you stayed silent. She nodded, tears slipping onto her knuckles. I was wrong. You don't have to forgive me. I just want you to know I've watched every step. Even if I stayed in the shadows too long. I stepped aside, my voice soft. Come in. There's fresh coffee. She walked through the door, not as the matriarch, but simply as a mother who was too late, still trying to love what she'd almost lost. 3 hours passed. The sun had just dipped beneath the horizon, casting the sky in violet hues and lighting the porch with a warm golden spill when the gate creaked open again. Trinity stepped out first. No lipstick, no designer shoes, just flat sandals, a faded cardigan, and loose jeans. She clutched a thick hardcover novel and a tall cup of iced tea. You still read out here? She asked, glancing at the balcony. Her voice wavered with something that wasn't quite nervousness, maybe memory. Nelson said you liked mint tea, she added, holding it out. He followed a few steps behind her, arms weighed down with a slim briefcase, a folder, and what looked like a half-open laptop bag. He gave a crooked smile when he saw me, half sheepish, half unsure. They both hesitated when they reached the porch steps, but no one turned away. We're not here to say sorry like it fixes everything, Trinity began, her voice gentle but firm. Because we know one visit doesn't erase 10 years of distance. Nelson nodded. I signed up for a business management course. I'm starting from scratch, really. Not trying to impress anyone, I just want to learn. If you're open to it, I'd appreciate your advice. I stood quietly, studying the two people who had once represented everything I wasn't allowed to be. The favored. The celebrated. The chosen. Now they stood in front of me, unadorned, unarmed, and for the first time sincere. Nothing changes in a day, I said. But at least today it feels like we're finally speaking the same language. Trinity took a step closer. I've taken a 3-month sabbatical from work. I was thinking of coming to visit you in Tokyo, only if you want that. Not to plan your schedule. Just to be your sister. Her voice cracked at the end. I don't want to look back and realize I never tried. I pulled out 2 chairs and motioned toward the one closest to the railing. Sit. Your tea's getting warm. We sat beneath the twilight, the 4 of us. No more polished lies, no more roles. Just people, tired, changed, and finally willing to see each other. Something loosened in me. Not forgiveness, but something more honest, willingness. The start of something real. The next day, I sorted through final documents for my Tokyo relocation, board presentations, apartment keys, travel confirmations. My suitcase sat packed near the door, filled with business suits and unspoken hopes. Late that afternoon, Mom appeared again at the study door. No script this time. No forced grace. Do you have a moment? She asked, her voice soft, almost tentative. I nodded. She sat across from me, eyes fixed on the closed laptop. I know I can't ask for forgiveness right now. But if you're willing, I'd like to begin again. This time on your terms. I looked at her. And unexpectedly, I felt the smallest thread of softness tug at my heart. Then you need to listen, I said. Really listen. No more rewriting history. No more pretending I wasn't there. Respect starts with presence. She nodded slowly. No excuses. I hear you. And I'll learn. Later that evening, Trinity came by again, this time alone. She held a neatly folded travel guide, annotated with highlighters and sticky notes. I'm not trying to run your itinerary, she said with a nervous laugh. You mentioned wanting to explore more, so I thought I'd help if you let me. That's not to control you, Trinity said with a shy smile, pulling something from her canvas tote, a folded tourist map of Tokyo, annotated with handwritten notes. You said once you wanted to see more of the world, she continued. I just thought, maybe this was my small way of contributing. If that's okay. I looked at her, feeling the weight of all the years I'd spent shrinking under the shadow of the perfect older sister. But the woman standing in front of me wasn't condescending or polished. She was open. Humble. Human. Her eyes didn't challenge anymore. They invited. You can visit, I said gently. As long as you come as my sister, not as someone checking my work. Trinity laughed, an actual laugh, light and real. A real sister. Is that allowed? I nodded. That night, for the first time in over a decade, the whole family sat down for dinner together. No wine-fueled jabs. No debates over seating arrangements. Just grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, and a kind of quiet peace none of us knew we'd been missing. Nelson cleared his throat halfway through the meal. So, I've been working on something, he said. A startup concept. Not asking for money, he added quickly, raising both hands in mock surrender. Just, if you have time, would you take a look? I reached for my iPad without hesitation. Send it. If you're serious, I'll give you a serious review. He smiled, visibly exhaling. After dessert, I stepped out onto the balcony, the sea humming softly beneath a canopy of stars. The warm summer breeze carried a familiar comfort, but this time it didn't feel like nostalgia. It felt like closure. Mom joined me quietly, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Are you really okay with moving that far? She asked, her voice barely above the wind. I am, I said, turning toward the dark water. Because this time I'm leaving as someone who was chosen. Not someone who was left out. She nodded slowly. Then, after a long pause, asked, in this house? I'll rent it out, I said. But if the family continues trying, I'm open to making summer reunion season again. Her eyes widened in surprise. Really? With one rule, I added. Everyone pitches in. No more showing up just for the photo op. She chuckled, her eyes shimmering. Then I guess I'd better relearn how to bake. The house behind us glowed, soft light, steady laughter. It no longer made me feel like a stranger. It felt like something entirely new. The next morning, as my taxi wound down the coastal road, I glanced back one last time. Trinity and Nelson waved from the porch. Mom held up a hand-painted sign. Safe travels, Elena. I smiled, eyes damp, not from sorrow. From freedom. The Tokyo sky was nothing like Maine. No pine trees. No sea mist. Just the hum of ambition and a city alive with momentum. I stood at the window of my new apartment, tea in hand, staring out at Tokyo Bay. This wasn't running. This was arriving. This wasn't escape. This was a choice, an intentional, clear-eyed decision. A chapter closing and a new one opening with my name on the spine this time. For so long I'd believed that success was the only weapon I had against being overlooked. That if I rose high enough, became powerful enough, earned every title and accolade, they'd finally have no choice but to see me. To regret. But when I arrived here in Tokyo, unpacking the last of my belongings into a sleek apartment overlooking Tokyo Bay, something finally crystallized. Revenge was never the answer. Because revenge is still tethered to the people who once broke you. It wasn't about them anymore. It never really was. I didn't need them to witness the moment I arrived. I needed me to believe I deserved to be here in the first place. At noon that day, an email from Nelson arrived with the subject line, Week 1 Challenge. He'd attached a revised version of his startup plan and included a short, unpolished note. This time, I didn't write it to prove anything. I wrote it because I want to learn. Thanks for giving me the chance. I smiled and read through the draft, thoughtful better. I offered a few gentle edits and typed back one line. It's never too late to begin again if you're sincere. Later that afternoon, I received a call from Trinity, who had just finished the first module of a leadership course in New York. I'm flying to Tokyo next month, she said, beaming. Not to supervise. Just to learn how to be a better sister. I laughed, not out of skepticism, but because it felt real. For the first time, it all felt genuine. Minutes later, a photo message from Mom appeared. It was the keepsake box, the one with all my newspaper clippings, now placed on the family altar in Bar Harbor. Beside it, a newly framed family photo. And beneath the image, handwritten in Mom's careful script, family is where you don't have to be perfect to be loved. I didn't cry. But my chest ached the way it does when a wound has been quietly healing for a very long time. For so much of my life, I had craved the things most people take for granted, a proud word, a warm call, a place at the table without having to fight for it. But adulthood had taught me what childhood never did. Family is not biology. It's not who raised you or shared a last name. Family is where you're heard, respected, and allowed to exist fully, not for who they wanted you to be, but for who you already are. Real success isn't about standing above others while they applaud. It's about standing tall in your own life, no longer bending to make others comfortable. I forgave not because they'd earned it, but because I no longer wanted to carry the weight of the past. I opened the door again, not out of softness, but because I had become strong enough to set the rules. If they wanted to walk beside me now, they'd have to do it on equal ground. No more hierarchy. No more inherited scripts. The next morning, I stepped out of the company shuttle in front of Cowan Global Headquarters. The mirrored tower reached into the sky like it had always known I was coming. A young reporter rushed toward me, voice eager. Miss Westbrook. One quick question, what would you say is your greatest success? I paused, smiled gently, and replied, not losing myself. She blinked then laughed. That's tomorrow's headline. I turned, walked through the sliding glass doors, and never looked back. Elena Westbrook's story is proof that your worth isn't measured by the applause of others, but by the truth you choose to live. Success isn't about revenge. It's about healing. Reclaiming your voice. Rewriting the story. Family, if it wants to be called that, must learn to listen, to respect, and to grow. Not just when you're small, but especially when you've grown tall. And sometimes the only way to find home is to build it yourself. What would you have done in Elena's shoes? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more stories about strength, family, and the power of standing on your own.